Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has been out for a little while now, and I've been playing a ton of it. And I figured, seeing as I make quite a bit of Call of Duty Zombies content, it'd be fitting if I made a video kind of giving my review / thoughts of the package as a whole. If you just want the TLDR, I'm very pleasantly surprised by Black Ops 6. I think it takes a lot of big steps forward compared to Cold War, and I've been having a ton of fun playing it. It's not perfect by any means, but for the most part, I think it's really good. Now settle in if you want to stick around for my more in-depth thoughts, because I have quite a lot to say. First up, I want to cover the multiplayer. The multiplayer this year is very solid. Nothing groundbreaking or revolutionary, but it does a really good job of being easy enough to get into whilst having a pretty decently high skill ceiling. The big new innovation of Black Ops 6 that is in all the different game modes is of course the Omni movement. This is the big thing Treyarch was bragging about during the lead up to the release, and I think it's really cool. Being able to sprint, dive, and slide in any direction comes in handy way more than you'd think it would, even outside of like a pro level play session. I know that myself, and probably a lot of other people, were very worried about the new movement system before the game came out, just worried that Sweats would get way too good at it way too fast, and it'd make the game unplayable for normal people. But thankfully, it just isn't that broken. You can do very well in the game without sliding or diving, at least in my experience, and I think that Omni Movement is a very cool mechanic that really breathes new life into the multiplayer. I think it really recaptures the feel of the jetpack movement from Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare while making it fit in this more grounded setting, being set in the early 1990s. And overall, I'm very happy with the Omni Movement. I think it's a lot of fun. And again, the Omni Movement applies to all the different game modes, but I think it makes the biggest changes in multiplayer. Multiplayer also has a new game mode, Kill Order, which is very cool in concept, but I think it falls a bit flat in execution. It's basically team deathmatch with a twist, because one person on each team gets selected to be the high value target, and their kills are worth double the points, but if they die, then the enemy team gets 5 points. They also get given full armor and 3 extra armor plates to boost up their health quite a bit, which is very simple, but it feels like a mode where a full squad of coordinated players is pretty much necessary to consistently win. The random nature of who becomes HVT means you could have some CDL League pro get HVT 1 life, and he does great, gets a ton of points, but the next few HVTs are people who don't know what they're doing, and they get killed over and over again, and then they cost you the game. It's just a very inconsistent mode. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. It feels too dependent on who your teammates are, which granted, yeah, it's a team-based game, and obviously playing in a public match is going to make a team-based game worse, but this is a mode where I feel like that really is the biggest handicap of it. Still an alright mode, I haven't filtered it out of my matchmaking, but it's not something that I'd go out of my way saying, I want to play Kill Order today, The maps overall are pretty decent this year. There's some standout bad maps, like Red Card, which is so bad that I've never actually played on it. It's just never been voted in. I can't really speak on it, but that's the one that I know people really hate. Scud is the other one that just really sucks. It was bad in the beta, and it's still bad here, but there are a lot of maps that I really like. I think Skyline is really cool, rooftop maps usually are, and I think it's another map that kind of fits into that category of cool, fun Call of Duty rooftop map. I also really like Protocol, which I don't know if that's an unpopular opinion or not, but it's probably mostly because it just gives me a lot of nostalgia for Gibraltar from Call of Duty World War II. And of course now Nuketown is back and it's as fun as ever. But I think that the new map that'll end up being Black Ops 6's big iconic map that people take away from this one will be Stakeout, which is basically this game's version of Shipment, and it's just so much fun. At least for camo grinding. I've been playing a ton of hardcore face-off for grinding out camos, and Stakeout has just become one of my favorite maps, period, because of it. The one downside to this is that Stakeout is so good and so chaotic that it makes the other 3 face-off maps seem neglected in comparison. Like, nobody ever wants to play Ngala or Warhead. Just give us Stakeout 24/7 at this point, Treyarch. People have been asking for it online, I've been seeing. I know we have Nuketown 24/7, but one more 24/7 playlist won't hurt, I promise. The actual gunplay also feels really good. I've mostly been using ARs and shotguns so far, but I've dabbled in everything, and every gun feels good to shoot. Granted, most of my multiplayer playtime is in hardcore, so I don't know if the guns will all feel as good in normal core modes where you don't kill people in 1 to 2 shots. And the old school prestige system is back, which I'm very happy about. I've never liked the newer prestige system that they've had in the more recent Call of Duties, where you just prestige automatically every set number of levels, and nothing actually changes gameplay-wise. It just feels like an extra stat to track just how long you've been playing the game for. With it being back to the classic prestige system, where to prestige you must choose to reset everything to enter the next prestige, it makes it a much bigger choice, especially if you're doing camo grinding like I am. Like, it's a very difficult choice to say, I'm in prestige and reset, and then like you have to use your unlock token on a gun from a class that you're camo grinding for. Or, you know, you're just gonna have to grind up levels again to get to the point where you unlock your guns again. There's a lot of choice you have to think about when prestiging with this older system. Again, it makes it more of a choice, something you have to commit to, which I really, really like. But the big thing that myself and many others focus on when a new COD game comes out is the aforementioned camo grinding. I've never actually gotten Dark Matter or whatever the big Dark Matter-esque camo is in any Call of Duty game before, but I got very close in Modern Warfare 2 2022. But Black Ops 6 Dark Matter seems like a very achievable goal that anyone can achieve with enough time invested. Because first of all the main camos are just for getting headshots, with 2 special camos before you unlock gold for a specific gun. I'm so glad that they changed it back to just headshots instead of having tons of camo categories with different requirements for each of them. It just overcomplicated the process and just added so much unnecessary bloat to the whole process. And you can now also unlock camos with a gun regardless of what level you have it leveled up to, which is another excellent change, as needing to grind out weapon levels to get all the camos for your gun was another thing that just dragged out the grind to an unnecessary length. And if you're watching this, you probably already know that the best playlist to get camos is Hardcore Face Off. Just 3 maps that nobody wants to play, and then Stakeout. So overall, I think the multiplayer is very fun this year. I just don't have a lot to say about it. You know, it's a Call of Duty multiplayer. Obviously, I don't talk about multiplayer on the channel much to begin with, so I wanted to kind of keep it brief. But I've been playing a lot of it, I've been liking it, and it's for sure better than Modern Warfare 2. I don't know if it's better than MW3 though, because I didn't play MW3. I just skipped that game altogether. Then up next is the campaign. I'll talk about this one for longer than the multiplayer, and just an FYI, there will be plenty of spoilers in this section, so skip to this time if you want to avoid them. We'll start off minor, and I'll give another spoiler warning once I get into some of the more plot twisty story details at the end of the campaign section. I thought the campaign this year was really, really good. The setting of the Gulf War is actually really unique in the realm of video games. Well, the fact that it takes place during Operation Desert Storm in particular is unique, as obviously there are just hundreds of first-person shooters set in the Middle East, but most of those are set post 9/11. Actual Desert Storm games are a lot more rare. Story is pretty typical for a Call of Duty Black Ops game, at least it's similar to Cold War. A new PMC called Pantheon has popped up with a new chemical weapon that they call the Cradle. They also have a mole in the CIA, so your group has to operate under the radar. The whole game is pretty much building a team and then following leads to find the Cradle, learning who Pantheon's mole is in the CIA, and then finding out what their end goal is. The game has several missions that are in the same vein as Desperate Measures from Cold War, which was the mission where you sneak around in the KGB headquarters to find a punch card. And that mission was like the fan favorite from Cold War, so it's clear that Treyarch wanted to kind of recapture that magic again. And really, if there's one thing that this campaign just excels at across the board, it's mission variety. There's actually surprisingly few missions where you're just shooting your way from A to B to get through the mission. Most of them have something else you're doing at one point in time. And the handful of missions that I thought were the real highlights for me were Most Wanted. This is the first stealth mission, and the first chunk of it has you infiltrating a CIA black site under a Bill Clinton rally at Capitol Station in order to save Adler, who's being held down there. You need to get the retinal scan of a senator at the rally who has access to the black site, and you have several ways to get the scan. And also, side note, the music playing at the rally is also made up of the different jazz instrumentals from COD Zombies, so I may or may not have made a soy boy face when I first heard it. The second half takes place inside of the black site, where it turns out that Pantheon got there first to try and get Adler. And I was expecting the rest of the mission to just be all guns blazing, but I was surprised to learn that you can stay in stealth pretty much all the way to Adler. There's even a Dark Ops challenge for it that I got my first time through without even realizing that it was a thing. You still have to play your way out though, but obviously, it's a Call of Duty mission. I kind of hope it would end with some guns blazing, explosions, and whatnot. The fact that you can just stay in stealth as long as you can in this mission was a very welcome surprise. Up next is Hunting Season, which is basically an open world mission. Set in Operation Desert Storm, you need to destroy 4 Scud missiles to get the British SAS to help you investigate one of Saddam Hussein's palaces where Pantheon is storing the Cradle before they level the place. You have a very open map with tons of side objectives in addition to the Scuds. You know, you've got Pantheon outposts, you've got a bunch of supply drops, you've got other just unique objectives that'll give you like a mortar strike and attack choppers. You know, there's so much to do. And they all benefit you positively. You get gear or you get lore because there's like audio tapes you can get from some of the places. They aren't just time waster objectives, they help you and make the rest of the thing easier. This is just another mission that's really fun with a ton of freedom on how you go about completing your objectives. Emergence, and this is the zombie mission. If you've seen any clips of the campaign where there's zombies, this is the mission where they all appear. You go to the secret lab where the cradle was being developed, only to find out that there's a leak and your gas mask gets broken. You have to traverse through the 4 wings of the lab to find the director keycards to access the biochemical wing where the cradle is being held at. All the enemies that you engage are zombies, and all the bosses are also zombie bosses. You know, there's an abomination, a mimic, 2 manglers, and a disciple. This is also the mission where you learn that the playable character, Case, was one of the initial test subjects for the cradle, which started as kind of like a super soldier project, and they ended up, pivoting and turning it into a hallucinogenic weapon. This is another really cool mission. It's pretty much just a haunted house type of level, and I bet it wouldn't be as fun on replays, but, on the first time through, it's really, really something else. You also get to choose the order in which you get 3 of the 4 keycards, which extra player choice and how you go about your objectives is always appreciated. And finally, Under the Radar. This is the last mission that I feel like is worth mentioning for good reasons, and it has you and your squad infiltrating a bioweapons lab underneath Vorkuta, the gulag that Mason got sent to at the very beginning of Black Ops 1. And that original Vorkuta mission is very widely considered one of, just if not the best mission in all of Call of Duty. So it's a very ballsy move to make a mission return to this location and an obvious play to kind of tug on people's nostalgia heartstrings. But this mission is a lot of fun. It starts as the second big stealth mission in the style of Desperate Measures. You need to sabotage 3 parts of the Pantheon base: the helicopter, the radar, and the SAM turrets. There are several ways you can go about doing so. You can just be sneaky with it, or you can just put C4 on everything and blow it all up. I do think it's pretty cheap that Savati, the character you play as for this mission, can use her keen eye ability to pretty much bypass the whole thing. But you don't have to do that, and if I ever play through the game again, I definitely will not, because it just really, it turns a section where you could have a lot of thought and planning into something where you just talk to 3 people, and you just have to say 3 things to each of these 3 people, and you basically win, and then you get to the next part. And the second half of the mission starts with you storming the camp by helicopter, and then you break into the lab to capture the main villain of the game. Pretty standard Call of Duty stuff, but that first section I thought was a ton of fun. I also think that the upgrade system in this game is really, really cool. You have to scavenge money while out on the missions to buy perks for Case, your playable character, which Woods mentions, because he's part of the team back at the base that you have, mentions that because, you're all basically acting as rogue CIA agents, you can't use your own money. So you have to scavenge everything out in the field. And it's actually really well balanced, because if you're as thorough as I was, you should have just enough money to buy your last perks the final time that you return to the Rook, which is the safe house where you can actually buy the upgrades. There's a bit of extra grinding that you can do to save up and buy a handful of weapon blueprints for multiplayer, but there's a fast money farm on the mission at Saddam's palace, so you can get all the money that you need pretty fast. I think I did all the money grinding that I had to for those blueprints in probably like 20 minutes. It's not that bad. And I like the story a lot more than I was expecting as well. Which, for this section, this is where I'll get into the more major spoilers. I will assume that you've played the story and know the twists and whatnot if you're watching this far. And here is the time to skip to if you want to avoid the story spoilers and just skip to the zombies section. But if you don't care about spoilers, or if you spoilers, and if not, settle in. Black Ops 6 does a really solid job of showing what happened after the Black Ops 2 flashback missions with Woods, which was the main thing I was very concerned about, seeing how he was pretty much right after Mason died. Which I think they did a really good job of. But aside from him and Adler, the whole cast is made up of new characters, at least the whole main cast. A few Cold War characters pop up here and there in missions throughout the campaign, and this is also where they make a canon that Park survived in Cold War. Unless they confirmed it in Warzone, I wouldn't know. I didn't follow the Cold War Warzone story, so rest in peace to my man Lazar. Anyone with a brain saved him in Cold War, and the fact that he's probably dead now, very sad. But the new crew, Marshall, Felix, Savati, and Case, are all really cool. Particularly Marshall. Since Case is a silent protagonist, Marshall really feels like he's the main character of the story. The twists affect him the most, and he's the character who does the most growing throughout the campaign. And he's also just the leader of your group. He's the one who calls most of the shots. But Felix, I think, is probably my favorite out of the new cast. And I think it's cool that he's kind of a conscientious objector, refusing to take a human life ever again after his time spent with Stasi, which was the secret police of East Germany. His dialogue and his philosophy are just so interesting to listen to, and I actually think it's really sad that by the end of the game he gives in and starts killing again, which honestly makes him probably my favorite out of this whole bunch of new characters.
I bloodied my hands, burdened my soul with complicity, and now I live in shame. Never again. I cannot say. I think that makes us a necessary evil. Perhaps this is why I prefer computer systems, ones and zeros. However, binary thinking is not conducive to modern existence. Social systems are complex webs. I think we can only navigate the gray and hope that history views us favorably.
And Case is just an okay protagonist. I feel like Treyarch wanted to make another character like Bell from Cold War, but Bell was really lightning in a bottle that you just can't easily replicate. The fact that Bell was a silent protagonist who you had extensive control over creating helped to make this twist super unpredictable and hit super hard. It was basically just the reverse twist of the Black Ops 1 twist, where instead of in Black Ops 1 where Mason was a CIA operative who was brainwashed and turned into a sleeper agent by the Russians to carry out their plans, Bell was a member of Perseus, the super secret group that was like a Russian terrorist group that had plans to nuke the whole eastern seaboard and was brainwashed by the CIA to help them stop his former allies. That's why the twist worked so well in Cold War. You thought you were this nothing character when in reality you were the most important part of the puzzle the whole time. It seems like they tried to do something similar with Case, a silent protagonist and all, but by the time that the twist shows up midway through that you were one of the initial test subjects for the Cradle, that's it. They never really reveal any more past that point, so the whole thing just feels half-baked. And the twist with Case might be very lackluster, but I'll admit that the twist for who the real villain is really caught me off guard. Treyarch did such a good job of making Livingston such an unlikable dick who is just against you the whole game. And I assumed, much like some of the other characters, that he was the CIA mole, just because he sucked so much. But the real twist with it being Harrow, the supportive character who's been helping you the whole game, really took me by surprise, which I always like in a plot twist. But as a villain, she kind of falls flat, especially in the worst mission of the game, at least in my opinion, the penultimate mission, Separation Anxiety. This mission feels like it wants to be Break On Through to Electric Boogaloo, which Break On Through was the mission where you were inside of Bell's head in Cold War. Both missions have you inside the head of a character to uncover the main villain's plot, but the difference here is that you had played as Bell the whole game in Cold War, well, the whole game minus a couple missions. He was the main character you played as, though. And the setting was Vietnam, which you really didn't see much of in Cold War. Separation Anxiety has you playing as Harrow and tries to give her a more sympathetic backstory with her parents, who were CIA operatives, having been killed by the CIA itself, leading to her joining up with Pantheon and plotting to destroy the CIA from within, take over, and basically turn into their own little shadow puppet thingy. But the whole thing falls flat because by this point, you probably don't like Harrow because she's the main villain. By this point, it's been revealed, it's out in the open, she's done some pretty mean things. The mission also has a very large portion set at Vorkuta, which is where you were in literally the mission prior to this to capture her. It's just a long, boring mission that is such a huge pace breaker right before the end of the game. And it kind of soured my thoughts for a little while on the campaign because that was kind of my last taste I had of it, was just this boring mission with a character who I don't really like. It's even worse that the final mission happens concurrently with this one. You jump between the two. So you can't even finish Separation Anxiety and then just finish out with the fun last mission where you have to defend the Rook from the Pantheon onslaught. Midway through the final mission defending the Rook, you jump back into Harrow's head, and by that point I was kind of checked out with the campaign, honestly. I just do not like this mission at all. Call me a TikTok zoomer brain, low attention span, but it was just not it. I really don't know what they were thinking. I mean, I know what they were thinking, I just don't think they really pulled it off as well as I hope they did. They also do the Cold War thing where they leave it ambiguous as to whether or not Case survives, but let's be real, he's not like Bell where he was actually like a very evil character until he was brainwashed, so it made sense to kill him off. They're probably going to bring Case back in Warzone. I'm just saying. They also have an end scene where Livingston apologizes to Woods and Mason and says that the CIA needs them back, since they may have defeated Pantheon and Harrow, but there's likely still remnants of the group embedded within the CIA. We then see a CIA mole typing on a computer, revealing that the game's big bad mole is Jackson Kane. Who the hell is Jackson Kane? So it turns out the big next mole in the CIA, who they're probably going to follow in Warzone, is Jackson Kane, a character who appears in like 2 cutscenes and 1 mission and is never acknowledged by any of the characters, to my knowledge at least. If he is, it certainly slipped by me. Awesome. And it doesn't help that Kane looks a lot like Alex Mason in this cutscene, which had me very, very worried for a minute. Despite having a pretty shaky ending and some underbaked plot threads and, a bad mission at the end of the game, Black Ops 6 manages to still be a ton of fun. It definitely fails to reach the same level of height and quality of the first two Black Ops games, but it's right about on par with Cold War. I think Black Ops 6 is better gameplay, and I think it's just longer as well. I think Cold War was really short. I haven't played it in a long time, though, since it came out, but I remember Cold War being really short. This campaign is a good bit longer, and it has better gameplay variety, but Cold War had definitely the stronger narrative, I think. So the two pretty much even out, in my opinion. And finally, the thing you're probably all waiting for, zombies. My excitement level for Black Ops 6 was actually really low right before it came out, especially after they had all the YouTubers and influencers play Liberty Falls. Because I'm sorry, but Duke Dennis should not be hitting round 50 on his first attempt at any map. But I was wrong about Black Ops 6, and it improves upon Cold War zombies in just about every way I can think of. And first of all, it's difficulty. Cold War was a cakewalk. There's no way to kind of talk around it. It was way too easy, especially once you got all your perks, weapon classes, field upgrades, and ammo mods upgraded all the way. Thankfully, Black Ops 6 is a ton harder of a game. But this is more a result of a lot of changes that add up rather than just one thing, so I'm going to go through all these different changes that I feel make the game better, some of which also make the game harder, and also, this game has personality again, which is something that Cold War and MW3 zombies were both sorely lacking, although, strangely enough, Vanguard zombies I think had a ton of personality, especially with the ether demons you could talk to. Those guys were cool. The biggest factor for this improvement is that zombies has a main cast of characters again. Because unlike Cold War where everyone was just playing as operators all the time, here you have a set cast of 4 with the option to play as operators if you'd like. Which I don't know why they didn't just do this in Cold War. This isn't some crazy innovation. World War II zombies was literally like this. But whatever, it's still a good change and improvement on Cold War. Because the lack of a real crew was really what made Cold War's story fail at getting its hooks into people. I mean, you look back at World at War and Black Ops 1 before the story was really unfolding and before most people really even knew that there was a story. Back then, some people just thought these were just random places you're going to. It was the characters people got attached to. And not having these characters to get attached to is just a really bad thing, especially because Cold War was literally the first game in the Dark Ether saga. You want your first game to hook people. Literally all the actual characters in Cold War were just on the radio the whole time, far away from the action, which made it pretty much impossible to get invested. But they've rectified that, and all is right in the world now. Well, not everything, but zombies is better now. I think my favorite is Weaver, mostly just because he's always been one of my favorites, even going back to Black Ops 1 when I played that as a little kid when I was really too young to be playing Black Ops 1. I'm a big Weaver fanboy in general, but all of the characters seem really fun and well written. The cast of characters is Weaver, Carver, and Dr. Gray from Cold War, and then also Maya, who is a new character who is helping Dr. Peck, and she joins the playable characters. The maps as well are just a huge step up. Liberty Falls is pretty plain and basic, but there's nothing wrong with having a plain and basic map, and it works with a more chill map for camo grinding, or if you just want a more relaxing game of zombies. I mean, people have always appreciated Town from Black Ops 2 for being there as just a fun, chill map to play on, same with the Giant from Black Ops 3, Classified from Black Ops 4. It's good for a zombies game to have a map like this for just relaxing game. But I can overlook the more plain theming of Liberty Falls because Terminus alone has more personality and atmosphere than all of Cold War combined. Except for maybe Mauer. I really like Mauer. But it's just... Terminus is so good. I love maps set in prisons. And I really like maps set on islands. Terminus feels like if you put Mob of the Dead and Zetsubo no Shima into a blender. It's just creepy and claustrophobic, but also kind of freeing at the same time. You feel the same sense of liberation that the characters do once you get on a boat and you can travel around the archipelago that the map is set on. I really like Terminus, but I also really like Liberty Falls. They're both really solid zombies maps. The special enemies are a bit of a mixed bag. Abominations return for Liberty Falls and aren't too bad since there's a lot of big open areas on that map to deal with them. The big complaint I have with the special enemies is that Black Ops 6 continues to drag my homie the Mangler through the mud. It started as a cool mini-boss on Gorod Krovi as a Soviet version of the Panzer Soldat, and it just since become as overused as Hellhounds in my opinion. The Manglers have been in every single zombies map since Firebase Z 3 years ago. Not counting Vanguard, but that game has Sturmkriegers, which are pretty much the same thing anyways, just a big heavy zombie with a range attack and a big melee punch. It made sense that they were on Firebase, since that map was a Soviet base, and it had a lot of lore ties to Gorod anyways, with the Ray K wonder weapon being made from the salvaged parts of the Raygun Mark III. But they're just overused now. On the bright side, Treyarch gave them a sleek redesign for this game, which looks really cool and a lot more intimidating, and they put the nearly decade-old Gorod Krovi model to rest. Bad thing is how much they get spammed, which this is probably the biggest complaint people have overall with Black Ops 6 is just the Mangler spam. The amount that spawn in per round goes up for however many people you have in your game, and it just gets obnoxious at a certain level. They do a lot of damage with melee, and their arm cannon's projectile has really strong tracking, so it can feel like a Herculean task to avoid their ranged attacks. There's also no Shatter Blast ammo mod, which in Cold War was my go-to for dealing with enemies like Manglers and Panzers, and that's not here now, so they're a lot harder to kill. The overabundance of Manglers is probably the biggest annoyance that I have with Black Ops 6, but it'll hopefully get tweaked in future updates. Hopefully, like fingers crossed. Parasites also return on Terminus after not being present since Revelations as a popcorn enemy, and they're pretty much the same as they were in Black Ops 3. What, I don't have a spiel prepared for every enemy type. And Vermin are the first new enemy type. They act as the main Hellhound enemy on Liberty Falls and spawn alongside Parasites on Terminus. They're freaky but are very weak, but I absolutely dig their design. I'm absolutely positive that one of the big inspirations for them was the head spider from John Carpenter's The Thing. The Vermin, I think, are a very fine addition to the game mode. They add a lot of that creepy factor back in, especially on Terminus. And the final new enemy type is the Amalgam, the main boss of Terminus. Well, not the main boss, but the main boss you'll fight if you're not doing the Easter egg on Terminus. They're very freaky, and are another enemy that I bet had its design based on The Thing from The Thing, just because of its big chest mouth. And also it's because it's a giant mass of assimilated people into one monster. It's disgusting, and I love it. It adds that creep factor back that we've been missing for so long. They're very difficult and very bullet spongy, but they don't spawn too frequently, so I think they're fine. They also have a tendril attack that grabs a player and pulls them into the monster, which makes for some very funny moments I've been seeing people post online. Armor's also been reworked here, which maybe was like this in MWZ, but I never played that, so I'm not sure. But it's been changed to take armor plates instead of being refilled at the armor station like Cold War or Vanguard. You can still craft armor plates though, so you don't have to completely rely on drops, and I'm surprised by how much I like this change. I thought it would make the game easier by having you not have to run to an armor workbench, but it actually makes it a lot harder. You have to buy better armor instead of crafting it, and it's very expensive. It's $4,000 for level 2 and $10,000 for level 3. It really makes you think about how you're going to ration out your points at the beginning of the game, since points are actually really scarce in this game since it sticks with the kill-based points from Cold War and Black Ops 4, so, you don't get a lot of points in this game. So having something else that's expensive to spend it on, in addition to weapons and opening up the map and perks, it just strains your resources even more, and it makes the game more difficult as a result. The best armor, the level 3 armor, holds 3 plates, and you can only hold a maximum of 3 extra plates at a given time, which means that at best you'll only have 2 full sets of armor on you. And the actual armor plates from zombies are a lot more scarce than I was expecting them to be. This makes armor a bit more of a luxury and not as much of a crutch as it was in Cold War. Good change. Salvage has also been reworked, which, okay, fine. Vanguard reworked it first, and then I think set the standard going forward. Again, I don't know if it was like this in MWT, I don't know if they had MWT, I didn't play that game. But there's only one type of salvage, and not rare and uncommon salvage, which this is just a good change, because you run into a problem in Cold War. Well, I never ran into it just because I'm good at the game. But I've, talked to some of my friends, like Mom Tasty. If you ever see him, he always goes down in my zombies big retrospective videos in the background footage. But on the high rounds, zombies stop dropping uncommon salvage, which, seems good. The rate of rare salvage goes up as you go into the game, so you can afford those late game upgrades for your weapons and your armor and, like buying kill streaks, all that good stuff. Which sounds really good until you die and bleed out and need to buy your armor back again, and just don't have enough uncommon salvage to do so. Having just one type of salvage simplifies everything, but also makes you need to manage your resources more, as having weapon upgrades, ammo types, and crafting all draw from the same pool of resources, again, makes you need to consider more carefully what's important at the moment. Again, I love all these changes they're making. Gobblegums also return, which, they seem okay. I don't really use them very much. I used them last night. As of when I'm recording this, I did the Terminus Easter egg last night, and I used quite a few of them, which is honestly how I use them in Black Ops 3. I pretty much only use them when I was either playing with friends, just goofing off, or if we were doing an Easter egg. I don't really use Gobblegums at all when I'm just playing for fun. You earn them from leveling up and also from hitting certain round milestones during your game, and I assume you also get bonus gums from exfilling the same way you did with Ethereum and Cold War. which right now there's no way to buy Gobblegums outside of getting the Vault Edition of the game, but I think we all know that there's going to be some kind of change to this in the future. As for how egregious it gets, all we can do is wait and see. And the Wonder Weapons are a lot of fun. The Jet Gun on Liberty Falls is 1,000 times easier to use than the one on Transit, and the Beam Splitter is just a fun laser gun. But that's really all I have to say about zombies right now. I plan on giving both maps the Tactic Zombies treatment in their own videos once I've played them more and kind of have some more concrete thoughts on them. Because, you know, it could just be a honeymoon period thing where it's new zombies. I felt the same way with Cold War. I loved Cold War for a little while, but by Firebase Z rolling out, I was really burnt out of that game, and I didn't touch it again until after its DLC cycle had ended. But for right now, I think I've said pretty much all I need to say. I'm really liking zombies this year so far, and I'm really excited to see where they take the game mode, and supposedly we'll be getting a new zombies map by the end of the year, so that already has me excited. Black Ops 6 is just a really good Call of Duty game. Multiplayer is a big step up from previous years, in my opinion. The campaign is fun, but not perfect, and it's got a pretty shaky story, and the zombies is a lot better than I was expecting. For a free game, I think that's pretty good. But let me know what you think of Black Ops 6. Did it live up to your expectations or fail to meet them? Tell me in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video and haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to support the channel. It really means a lot. My next video will probably be the second Naruto video. I picked up a couple volumes of the uncut box set from the used game and movie stores near me, and I just ordered the other volumes for cheap off Amazon, which those will make making videos on the series way easier, since I can just rip the footage from the DVDs. I've already got my laptop set up to do that, instead of having to scour YouTube for clips I need, and risking myself running into Shippuden spoilers. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. Again, and if you haven't checked out the first one already, I would recommend you do so. I put a lot of effort into it. I thought it was pretty good. And as always, peace out and God bless. I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, cause I got it like that. Flow so smooth like I got it on tap. Yeah, and I'ma say it be a good night while I'm on my Yingling, while I'm drinking Bud Light. Can you get it when you miss